Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable Behavior Explained. Hi there. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and I'm your host of Adaptable. And this show was created so that people could better understand the reason and ways that people behave and the roots behind those reasons. And so today we're going to talk about an emotion that people do not like to talk about. They don't want to claim it, and they don't understand its origins often. And that is the topic of resentment. And this conversation is going to be a little bit tricky, but once you dive into your experience of resentment, or when you think about someone else that you know that might be feeling resentment, this show might be really helpful for you. So let's talk about it. Resentment is a feeling that oftentimes kind of simmers beneath the surface in yourself, in families, in people. And whether it's between siblings or parents or coworkers, your boss, children, partners, resentment can quietly shape our relationships. And today we're going to explore how grief and self-compassion are at the heart of healing resentment. We're going to talk a little bit about Brene Brown's powerful research from Atlas of the Heart. I love her language and conversation on resentment. So if you want to dig in more to all of the emotions, please pick up that book. It is a gem. But if you've ever felt weighed down by resentment in your own life or family, then I think you're going to glean a lot from this episode. So let's talk about the roots of resentment, because people don't really understand that it's rarely about one person's actions alone. It's often a signal that your feelings haven't been expressed, or your expectations haven't been spoken, or they have and they haven't been listened to, and that your needs haven't been met. And sometimes it's rooted in our own history. Sometimes when we need help, we didn't receive it. It leaves us feeling like it's unfair to give to others, like I'm pouring from an empty cup. So let me give you an example. Let's think about like an oldest sibling in a family system. Maybe they feel resentful because they're always expected to help with chores or care for younger children in the family system or younger siblings. But they never voiced how overwhelming it felt or how unfair it seemed. Maybe a parent feels resentment toward their partner for not stepping in with more discipline or maybe making dinner more, but realizes that they never actually asked for that support. They just hoped that it would happen. So let me give you some practical tips. First, you need to ask yourself, what am I really feeling beneath the resentment? 9 times out of 10, there's hurt. You're going to reflect on times that you felt unsupported in your family and just notice patterns where you experienced that. Practice naming your expectations out loud, even if you're not telling anyone, even if it feels really vulnerable, because that's where it starts. And let's talk about the cost of unexpressed feelings in relationships. So unspoken feelings are the breeding ground for resentment. When we don't voice our needs, we don't talk about our disappointments, feelings fester and they grow. Research shows that resentment is often a function of envy and often unmet needs. It's not usually just about anger at others. And I want you to understand the difference between envy and jealousy. Envy is I want what they have, and jealousy is somebody is between me and somebody else. So there's a little bit of a difference. A lot of people don't use that correctly. But when you think about, like, let me give you an example. Let's say a teenager feels resentful that their parent always praises their sibling or their achievements, but doesn't acknowledge their own efforts. Instead of sharing their hurt, they withdraw and they become distant. And maybe they even are mad or angry or resentful at the sibling who gets all the praise. Or another example might be a spouse that feels resentment building because they handle all the holiday planning, but never ask for help or never delegate duties to their partner. And they just assume that their partner should just know or should just offer to help. And so we're going to talk about be more practical. So I want you to think about using I feel statements to express your emotions before they turn into resentment. So that might look like, I feel overwhelmed by preparing for the holiday and I need to get all of the presents. And I'm wondering if you can take the responsibility of picking up the gifts for these 3 people. Or if I shop, will you wrap? And this might be part of your need to express the fact that you're having an overwhelming emotional experience and asking for what you need. You want to schedule regular check-ins with the people that you're in close relationship with and share your needs and share boundaries that you have maybe noticed you need in either internally or with each other. Because remember, expressing your feelings is an act of courage, and it shouldn't be an act of conflict. Now, we are very informed by our histories, and all of us carry the history of our story and our family generational story, and our past experiences shape how we respond to our current situations. And if we grow up or if we grew up feeling unsupported, we might unconsciously believe that it's unfair to help others because no one helped me, so why should I help them? Or that our needs don't matter. And this history can really fuel resentment in our current family roles, especially if you're in a role where the inherent role is to be more helpful. So let me give you an example. Let's say there was a parent who was responsible they were like the responsible one in their family system in their childhood. And now they feel resentment when their own children over-rely on them for everything, which echoes old patterns, right? Now, as the parent, it is their responsibility to show up for their kids. But as the child, it was not their responsibility to be there for everybody else in their family. And so the role confusion is showing up in their current role. And they might even have shame accompanied with the fact that now I don't want to feel a resentment toward my kids because they need me. It's normal for kids to need me, so I want to address that. Or think about an adult child that feels bitter about always being the peacemaker in their family system between the siblings. And it's a role that they never chose, but they feel stuck in it in their current family system or in their adult life with other relationships, perhaps even coworkers in a work environment. So you want to reflect on your personal history. When did you start feeling resentment in your family? And what was happening in your life at the time? And then seek support to process old wounds that might be influencing your current relationships, the patterns that you have, and ultimately the buildup of resentment of your unfinished business, unexpressed emotions, unexpressed needs, and unmet needs. But you really want to offer yourself compassion for those burdens that you've carried because they're real, right? And then unfortunately, people don't like to hear this part, but in order to heal resentment, we have to grieve and we have to have self-compassion because those are the antidotes to the resentment experience. So the true issue behind resentment is often unprocessed grief. It's grief for what we didn't get, what didn't happen, for the support that we needed but we didn't get, because as children, we really shouldn't have to ask for what we need. We should have our needs met without having to ask. And without grieving these losses, our compassion reserves run dry. We don't have anything left to pour into others. And so we have to recognize that self-compassion is essential. And when we attend to our own pain, we have more to give to others. So think about like a parent who grieves the lack of emotional support that they received when they were growing up. That will then help them soften the resentment toward their own children when their children ask for comfort, because they've given themselves the compassion that they always deserved but didn't get. So another example is potentially a sibling that allows themselves to mourn the attention that they never got, which then opens space for more patience for their brother or sister now. So let me give you some tips that you can do. And this is really powerful, so prepare to be a bit emotional if you really take it seriously. Write a letter to your younger self and talk to them like they needed to be talked to. Acknowledge the help that you needed but didn't receive. You'll be surprised at what comes up, and you'll find yourself back in time where you needed a lot more compassion and love. Practice self-compassion. Speak to yourself as you would to a dear friend. And if you catch yourself talking in a way to yourself that you wouldn't to someone that you care for, try to clean that up, because those pathways get deeper the more we talk to ourselves in ways that are unkind. And allow yourself to feel grief without judgment. It's really necessary, especially towards healing unresolved resentment. Compassion for others starts from within. We don't have it for others typically if we haven't given it to ourselves. So when we grieve our own losses and we practice self-compassion, we replenish our cup. Our reserves get full. And compassion isn't about ignoring our needs. It's about honoring them so that we can show up authentically and kindly. Resentment's a sign that we're running on empty and that we are out of space and that we are giving when we don't have much left to give. And that usually happens when we're not first giving to ourselves. And so if you're thinking about this as an issue for you, you're not alone. Kind of check in and be curious about that. So let me give you a little bit of an example, because if you tend to your own grief, you'll find it easier to support others in their emotional needs without the resentment. That's really what it's all about, right? Is cultivating connection that doesn't feel burdensome. So let me give you some practical tips that might help. I want you to think about setting boundaries that honor your need for space and time, that prevent compassion fatigue, and that prevent burnout. And remember that when you have compassion for others, you have to first start with yourself. I like this mantra: I can care for others without abandoning myself. And I think that that's something, especially as a trauma therapist, I have to think about regularly. And on the days that I start my morning with a compassionate practice of self-care, I do a lot better with my clients because I have plenty to give. And I think that's important. I can care for others without abandoning myself. And so if you're in a caretaking role, whether it's as a parent or in the occupation that you chose, try to adopt some of these strategies so that it's easier to remain balanced and full. So thank you so much for tuning in, because resentment is a signal. It's not a flaw, and it points us towards our unspoken needs and our unmet expectations and our old wounds that need our attention and love. And by grieving what we lost and practicing self-compassion, we'll have space for genuine connection now with the people in our relationships and in our life now. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone that might need to hear a little bit about how to heal from their own resentment. Know that you're not alone. This is a common feeling, and it's hard to name and figure out. And please make sure you like and subscribe if you found this helpful. Until we meet again, don't forget to lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.